Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn about IELTS Speaking Test Part 1. Our topic is going to be extreme sports. Extreme sports. In this lesson, we are going to look at some questions and some sample answers. At the end of this lesson, I'm also going to give you some tips to ensure that you pass your IELTS speaking test with a very high band. But before we begin this lesson, have you remembered to subscribe to the channel? If you haven't subscribed yet, then please do subscribe to this channel and I promise you, you will not regret it. This is because I upload videos on IELTS speaking and writing, but I also upload videos on grammar, tenses, vocabulary, pronunciation, and also videos on how to speak English in different situations. For example, you want to know what to say when you go shopping, when you go to the mall, or when you go to the doctor, or when you go to the optician. Or maybe you want to know how to speak English when you're answering the phone, or when you want to complain about something. Now, have a look at my videos, have a look at my playlists, and you will find so many helpful videos that will take your level of English a notch higher. Now, let's begin our lesson, and do not forget at the end of this lesson, if you find the video helpful, then give me a thumbs up. That is very, very encouraging for me. Remember, it's bad karma to benefit from something and not give something back. So if you find this video helpful, all I ask you to do is give me a thumbs up, share the video with other people, and subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask from you. Now let's begin our lesson. Let's look at question 1. Do you do any extreme sports? Do you do any extreme sports? In that question, the examiner wants to know whether you have done any extreme sports in the past or whether you do any extreme sports at all. Now, to answer this question, you can say, when the examiner asks you, do you do any extreme sports? You can say, not at all. I've actually never attempted to partake in any extreme sports. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. Not at all. I've actually never attempted to partake in any extreme sports. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. Now, in that answer, first of all, I pointed out that I have never attempted to do any extreme sports by saying not at all. And remember, you need to say that using the correct intonation. So raise your voice to emphasize that you have never done it. Do you do any extreme sports? Not at all. I've actually never attempted to partake in any extreme sports. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. Now, in that sample answer, I have underlined for you all the vocabulary that you need to speak about extreme sports. Never attempted to partake. To partake is a Band 9 word that means to do, to participate, okay? I have never attempted to partake. It means I have never participated in. I have never done any extreme sports. The other word is too risky. I find them too risky. Risky means dangerous. Risky is simply a band 9 word that means dangerous. I find them too risky. Risky, dangerous. The other word is rough. And then the last word is life-threatening. Life-threatening means that when you do this kind of sports, you could actually die from them, okay? The sports are life-threatening. They put your life in danger. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. To sustain is to get injured. Sustaining injuries is to get injured. Like, for example, you break your neck. An injury could be, for example, breaking your neck, breaking your leg, breaking your arms, okay? All those are different forms of injuries. So in question 1, I have made the examiner know that I have never ever attempted. I have never tried. Attempted is a band 9 word that means tried. I have never attempted. I have never tried. Okay? So in that question, I have confirmed that I have never done it, but I've also explained why. And that's what you should do in your IELTS speaking test. Make sure that you elaborate your answers. Do not simply say not at all, okay? Or say no or yes. Give the reasons why you have done it or not done it, okay? You can see there, I have a number of reasons. I have given 3 reasons, actually 4. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. Now, let's move on to question 2. Why do some people like extreme sports? Why do some people like extreme sports? In that question, the examiner wants you to give some reasons as to why you think some people like extreme sports, because for sure there are people who absolutely love to do extreme sports. Why do they like them? Now, you can answer this question by saying, extreme sports are very popular with certain individuals due to the fact that they find them challenging, exciting, and energizing. Others do it for the adrenaline rush and thrill that it gives them. Also, some people use this type of sports to get rid of their aggression, as well as suppressed anger and frustration. Extreme sports are very popular with certain individuals due to the fact that they find them challenging, exciting, and energizing. Others do it for the adrenaline rush and thrill that it gives them. Also, some people use this type of sports to get rid of their aggression, as well as suppressed anger and frustration. So in that answer, I have given a number of reasons as to why some people like extreme sports, and I have underlined all the reasons for you. Okay? They find them challenging. Some people like that. They find them exciting. They find them energizing, meaning that it gives them a lot of energy. Others do it for the adrenaline rush. Others do it for the thrill that it gives them. Thrill, okay? And some people use this type of sports to get rid of their aggression. To get rid of means to remove any form of aggression that they may have. And others use extreme sports to get rid of their suppressed anger. Some people have a lot of anger within them for whatever reason. And when they do the extreme sports, they get rid of that anger. Suppressed means that they have that anger deep in their heart. They have suppressed it. They don't show it on their face, but inside their heart, they have so much anger. That means that it is suppressed. And then the last one is to get rid of their frustration. So to get rid of their aggression, to get rid of their suppressed anger, and to get rid of their frustration. Maybe something has happened that is not what they expected. For example, they were expecting to pass an exam after working really hard, but when the results come out, they have failed. So they decide, I'm going to do extreme sports to get rid of my suppressed anger and frustration. So in that answer, I have a number of reasons, and I have used linking words to help me to join my ideas together. I have used and, I have used due to the fact that. Due to the fact that means because, okay? Due to the fact that is a band 9 linking word that simply means because. And then I have used as well as, also. So as well as is simply a linking word that means and. Now let's move on to question 3. Are extreme sports popular in your country? Are extreme sports popular in your country? In that question, the examiner wants to know whether in your country, people love to do extreme sports. Do people in your country love to do extreme sports? That's what the examiner wants to know. Now, to answer that question, you can say, not really. Majority of the people in my country hardly do any form of extreme sports due to the fear of breaking their limbs or dying. Others perceive participation in such sports as irresponsible behavior. Not really. Majority of the people in my country hardly do any form of extreme sports due to the fear of breaking their limbs or dying. Others perceive participation in such sports as irresponsible behavior. So in that question, I have made it very clear to the examiner that majority of the people in my country hardly means they hardly do it. It rarely happens. Hardly means rarely. They rarely do extreme sports. But that's not all. I went ahead and gave the examiner some reasons as to why they don't do it. Remember, you're supposed to elaborate your answers. And I have used the linking word due to introduce my reasons. Due to is simply a linking word that means because. And the reasons why majority of the people in my country don't do any extreme sports is because, one, they fear, because of the fear of breaking their limbs. Your limbs are your hands and your legs, okay? Your legs and your hands, those are your limbs. So some people are very scared of doing extreme sports because they don't want to break their limbs. And others are scared of dying because extreme sports are life-threatening. You could actually die from them. For example, if you have a very, very bad fall and you hurt your head, you sustain a serious head injury, you could die from it. And others perceive is a band 9 word that means think. Others think that such sports are irresponsible behavior. That when you do extreme sports, then you're being irresponsible because you are doing sports that are very risky and life-threatening. So by doing that, they think you're not responsible. Irresponsible is the opposite of responsible. So in that answer, I have given, first of all, I pointed out that majority of the people in my country hardly, which means rarely, do any form of extreme sports. And then I gave the reasons why they don't do it. And I used linking words to help me join my ideas together. I used due to, which I said means because. And then I also used or. Now let's move on to question 4. Do you think extreme sports are important? Do you think extreme sports are important? So in that question, the examiner wants your opinion. In your opinion, do you think that extreme sports are important at all? Now you can answer that question by saying, they are definitely important to those who enjoy them because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. They are definitely important to those who enjoy them because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. So in that answer, I have made it very clear to the examiner that they are definitely important, but only to those people who enjoy them. And I went ahead and gave reasons for that. I introduced my reasons using the linking word because. The first reason is because they derive. Derive is a Band 9 word that means get. They get a lot of pleasure. They derive a lot of pleasure. Pleasure is a Band 9 word that means enjoyment. They get a lot of enjoyment. They derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. Taking part in is a phrasal verb that means doing them. Taking part in means doing them. Okay? So, in that answer, I have provided my opinion. And that is the fact that I think extreme sports are important to those who enjoy them. And then I went ahead and provided some reasons. Because excuse me. Because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. So, they are definitely important to those who enjoy them because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. Now, remember to give your opinion and then you give the reasons, okay? And use linking words to help you to talk about your reasons. They are definitely important to those who enjoy them, okay? That is my opinion. Do you think extreme sports are important? Yes, they are definitely important to those who enjoy them. And then after that, I provided the reasons as to why I think they're important, because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. Now let's look at the last question, question 5. What precautions should you take while doing extreme sports? What precautions should you take while doing extreme sports? In that question, the examiner wants you to identify some things that you should do to protect yourself while you're doing extreme sports. What precautions should you take while doing extreme sports? Precautions are things that you should do to protect yourself before you do any extreme sports. So the examiner wants you to identify these things. That is the precautions. Now, you can answer that question by saying, there are numerous safety measures that one should take prior to undertaking any extreme sports, such as wearing the correct safety gear, for example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing, just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. There are numerous safety measures that one should take prior to undertaking any extreme sports, such as wearing the correct safety gear, for example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing, just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. So in that answer, I have identified some precautions, that is, things that people should do to protect themselves before they do extreme sports. There are numerous. Numerous means many. Numerous is simply a Bant 9 word that means many. Safety measures. Safety measures are precautions. So if you don't want to repeat the word precautions in your answer, you can use safety measures. Remember, you're doing your speaking test, so you want to show that you have a wide range of vocabulary. So instead of repeating precautions, you can say safety measures that one should take prior to. Prior to means before. Prior to is a Bant 9 word that means before. Undertaking. Undertaking is a Bant 9 word that means doing. Doing. Undertaking. And then after that, I introduced my precautions by using the linking words such as. Such as simply means for example. And the first precaution is wearing the correct safety gear. And then I gave an example. For example, a helmet to avoid head injuries. Head injuries is when you hurt your head. For example, if you fall down and you hurt your head, then you have an injury. You have a head injury. Another example of safety gear apart from a helmet is gloves and other forms of protective clothing. Protective clothing means safety gear. Remember, you don't want to use the same words time and time again. So instead of saying safety gear again, I used protective clothing. Just in case something goes wrong. Just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. Okay? That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. So there are numerous safety measures that one should take prior to undertaking any extreme sports, such as wearing the correct safety gear, for example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing, just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize. To minimize is to make something less. Remember, the opposite of minimize is maximize. To minimize, to make the injuries less. And sustained is simply a Bant 9 word that means the injuries that you get, the injuries that you sustain. So, in that answer, in sample Answer 5, I have identified the precautions, okay? I introduced all the precautions or the safety measures using the linking word such as wearing the correct safety gear. For example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing. And then after that, I explained why, and that is just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. So that's how you're supposed to answer these questions. Now, this brings me to our next section, as I promised earlier on, where I'm going to give you some tips to ensure that you pass your IELTS speaking test with a very high band. Tip number 1, make sure you understand the question. Listen really carefully to the examiner, and if you don't understand, feel free to say, "Excuse me, could you explain that word, please?" Excuse me, could you explain that word, please? Or if you don't hear the examiner correctly, then you can simply say, "Excuse me, could you repeat the question, please?" Excuse me, could you repeat the question, please? You will not be penalized for that. You will not lose marks for that. Feel free, if you don't understand the question, ask the examiner to repeat the question. Now, that is tip number 1. Tip number 2 is, for each question, make sure that you provide 2 to 3 answers. Elaborate your answers. Tip number 3, use linking words to join your answers together, to join your ideas together. Like in my sample answers, all the words that I've written in black are linking words. The next tip is, ensure that for each question, you provide answers in simple, compound, and complex sentences. If you want to get a band 9 or a band 8, then you should use a lot of complex sentences. A complex sentence has more than 3 verbs. In a complex sentence, you will find at least 2 linking words. In a compound sentence, you will find 2 linking words. A compound sentence has 2 verbs, and a simple sentence has just 1 verb. So if you want to get a higher band, then you should use a lot of compound and complex sentences. For example, when I say in sample answer 1, I have actually never attempted to partake in any extreme sports. That is a simple sentence. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. That is a compound sentence. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. That is a simple sentence. And then after that, extreme sports are very popular with certain individuals due to the fact that they find them challenging, exciting, and energizing. That is a complex sentence, okay? Sample answer 3. Not really. Majority of the people in my country hardly do any form of extreme sports due to the fear of breaking their limbs or dying. Another complex sentence, okay? So remember to use compound and complex sentences if you want a high band. Look at, for example, sample answer 5. There are numerous safety measures that one should take prior to undertaking any extreme sports, such as wearing the correct safety gear, for example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing, just in case something goes wrong. Now that is a complex sentence. And then the last sentence, that will help to minimize any injuries sustained. That is a simple sentence. So remember to use a variety of sentence structures in your answers. You're aiming for a band 8 or 9, then you need to use compound and complex sentences. Now, let's move on to the next tip, and that is, remember to use the correct vocabulary for the topic that you're talking about. In this lesson, we are talking about extreme sports. I have underlined for you all the vocabulary that you need to talk about extreme sports in red. All the words that I've underlined in red in my sample answers are examples of vocabulary that you should use. Never attempted to partake in, risky, rough, life-threatening, sustaining injuries, certain individuals, challenging, exciting, energizing, adrenaline rush, thrill, to get rid of their aggression, suppressed anger, frustration, fear of breaking their limbs or dying, passive, irresponsible behavior, derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction taking part in, numerous safety measures prior to undertaking, wearing the correct safety gear, a helmet, head injuries, gloves, protective clothing, something goes wrong, minimize any injuries sustained. Now, the last tip is try as much as possible to use the correct intonation when you're speaking. Intonation simply means raising and lowering your voice depending on what it is that you're saying. For example, in sample answer 1, I have used an exclamation at the end of the first part of the answer. Do you do any extreme sports? Not at all. So that you should say it with your voice raised a little bit, okay? Anytime you see an exclamation mark at the end of a sentence, it means that you should raise your voice when you're speaking those words. Now, this brings me to the last section of this lesson where I read for you the questions and the sample answers. Are you ready? Okay, let's begin. Question 1. Do you do any extreme sports? Not at all. I've actually never attempted to partake in any extreme sports. I find them too risky, rough, and life-threatening. I'm too scared of sustaining injuries. Question 2. Why do some people like extreme sports? Extreme sports are very popular with certain individuals due to the fact that they find them challenging, exciting, and energizing. Others do it for the adrenaline rush and thrill that it gives them. Also, some people use this type of sports to get rid of their aggression, as well as suppressed anger and frustration. Question 3. Are extreme sports popular in your country? Not really. Majority of the people in my country hardly do any form of extreme sports due to the fear of breaking their limbs or dying. Others perceive participation in such sports as irresponsible behavior. Question 4. Do you think extreme sports are important? They are definitely important to those who enjoy them because they derive a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from taking part in them. Question 5. What precautions should you take while doing extreme sports? There are numerous safety measures that one should take prior to undertaking any extreme sports, such as wearing the correct safety gear, for example, a helmet to avoid head injuries, gloves, and other forms of protective clothing, just in case something goes wrong. That will help to minimize any injuries sustained. So there you are. This brings me to the end of the lesson. Have you found this lesson helpful? Did you find the lesson helpful at all? Have you learned anything new? Then please give back by giving me a thumbs up, sharing this video on all your social media platforms, and subscribing to the channel for more helpful videos. Have you done that? Have you given me a thumbs up? Have you subscribed? Go on, do it. Now, thank you very much and see you in our next lesson. Bye bye.